This week was the first official week of spring ball, and boy, do we have a big show coming your way. We have practice updates, some general program news, Coach Prime in the headlines as always, a large question surrounding a player finally answered, recruiting news, and so much more. All coming at you next. What's up, everyone, and welcome to Buffs News Weekly, your weekly recap of all University of Colorado football news. I'm your host, Russ Dornish. Make sure to hit that like, comment, and of course, subscribe as we are on the trail for 1,000 subscribers. So let's jump right in. It's finally here. Spring ball has started for Colorado, and we have all the updates from an action-packed first week. First up are just some general observations from the first few practices of the year. So far, you can definitely tell a few things that have changed from last year's team. The compete level as players vie for starting spots is extremely high, and we already saw our first fight of the spring. The other big observation is just how much bigger the team actually got from this offseason. Many people commented on how small the team looked last year, and that is probably the biggest observation right off the bat. A couple of early surprises and players sticking out include Omarion Miller, who continues his development from a decent true freshman season. Miller was the talk of each press conference with his new wide receivers coach, Phillips, commenting this.
Coach, what have been your first impressions of Omarion Miller?
I like Omarion Miller. I'm starting to fall in love with Cormani McClain. So we're in the dating stages right now. So it's just a matter of, him continue to mature and be the player that we all expect him to be, and obviously be the player that he expects to be. And he's taking the right steps toward that.
Another player that has been seeing some praise is freshman tackle Jordan Seaton, who was last year's #1 offensive lineman in the 2024 class. Jordan is definitely putting in the work both during and after practice, already getting bigger thanks to our wonderful strength staff. In some one-on-ones, you can see that he can handle himself with some room for improvement, but Buff Nation is definitely excited to see what he can do on the field. And having Coach Phil to help him out, you can see them working one-on-one and a lot of things happening from it. Another big update also coming out of practice this week surrounding the rumors about sophomore cornerback Cormani McClain. Rumors started floating around by different fan bases claiming that McClain was transferring to their school once Cormani was not being seen at practice this past winter. Now, we can't confirm he actually wasn't there, he just wasn't featured in any of the well-off videos. Now, every rumor you could think of was floating around, mostly perpetuated by plenty of college football fans everywhere. Well, first came the confirmation that Cormani was indeed at the first spring practice, followed by a video from well off having Cormani confirm he is indeed not transferring.
Vlog coming soon, Cormani. Stop asking
Feel
me.
me? Alright.
Vlog coming soon.
Not transferring.
Hopefully this can stop the narrative and people can just leave it alone going forward, but consider this no news completely shut at this time. Coach Prime spoke to the media on Wednesday, providing, as always, some rather interesting nuggets of information. Let's run down some of the highlights for you and what you need to know. The biggest piece, of course, generated false headlines as sports news decided to run with the headline grabber of Coach Prime refusing to visit recruits in their homes. Now, out of context, that might seem bad, but Coach addressed that a bit in more detail, explaining his reasoning. Coach Prime has shown an ability to recruit players anywhere, of course, nabbing Travis Hunter to come to Jackson State, and then in his 2 years at Colorado, already grabbing both Cormani McClain and Jordan Seaton. Coach explained that what a parent wants most is to see where their boy is going to be fed, where he will sleep, and who will be watching him. And Coach Prime lives by this motto when recruiting, focusing on getting players to visit. We will have more on this later in the video as far as players who are visiting. I think this is a non-starter, and my biggest point that I've tried to make this week is that I feel that with Coach Prime's status and where he is, the hard part is going to be how many players are actually considering Colorado that want him to visit. It's going to be very hard for Coach Prime to put in that time, especially with how valuable it can be for both the program and himself to go on visits to players who end up not wanting to go to Colorado and just use the idea of Coach Prime visiting their house as clout with other players, families, and social media in general. So I can kind of see a point for Coach Prime. He'd rather see the seriousness of the player coming to Colorado and wanting to actually see what they are going to be dealing with. Other highlights of the presser included Coach saying that had Shedeur gone out in this draft, he would have been the second quarterback picked. Now, Coach wasn't just saying that, but explained. He talked to NFL coaches, GMs, and owners, and almost all agreed he would be the second or third quarterback taken off the board. It's obvious that Shedeur, Coach, and the team have some unfinished business this year with him returning for one last ride. Coach Prime also did discuss the spring game and the television rights, explaining that ESPN had to deal with the draft, and right now the team is waiting on the Pac-12 network and Fox to have an agreement on who is going to be covering it. Unfortunately, the Pac-12 network technically holds the rights as part of the league agreement, and yes, Colorado is still a member of the Pac until this summer. Hopefully they can come to an agreement and Coach Prime and the Buffs can be once again in the national spotlight, especially since Coach Prime has said what a big spectacle the event will be. If you want to find out more about the spring weekend and what to expect, check out this video that I recently posted that goes into detail and listens to what Coach Prime has to say about the weekend. We really hope this gets resolved and hope that we're on national TV and not the Pac-12 network. As we saw last year, the ratings really plummeted with the Pac-12 network, and at this point, I don't know many people who actually want to get it for just a month of the season when most teams will be leaving the Pac here in just a couple months. This leads us into our next segment, which is our weekly recruiting update. It seems Coach Prime is going heavy on the offensive line recruits as several players are on their radar. 4-star Zaire Addison has put CU in his top 12 and will be visiting Boulder in early April. 4-star lineman Nick Brooks has also scheduled to visit Boulder for the spring game at the end of April. Now, 2 recruits are currently visiting Boulder this weekend and have just finished off their visits per their social media accounts. First up is athlete Aaron Gregory, who is currently visiting CU as the Buffs pursue the top athlete in the 2026 class. But also visiting this weekend was 5-star and number 1 quarterback prospect Julian Lewis, who makes his second trip out to Boulder. Lewis is still committed to USC and has been since August, but Prime is pushing hard on quarterback recruits as Shedeur gets set to leave next year. Lewis did post this on social media, which is a photo of his representatives speaking with Coach Prime at the visit, making you wonder, okay, are they actually believing what Coach Prime has to say? Now, Lewis got to visit with new OC Pat Shurmur on this trip and check out the spring practices with the team, which were closed to the media on the day that he attended. Colorado is turning up the heat when it comes to recruiting the top guys in each class. Rather than going for quantity, Coach Prime is sticking with the quality over anything else. Another big update to a recruit we have been following is Mantrez Walker, who is set to announce his commitment in April. The 4-star linebacker will be at the spring game in April, which we reported on earlier this year. However, the big update is that Walker has received an official 24/7 crystal ball to Colorado, and right now all signs point to Walker being the first 2025 commit. Walker is one of the top linebackers out of Georgia for this recruiting class, and we are extremely excited to hopefully snag him and bring him on a team that is in desperately need of linebacking depth. In some non-football news, Colorado AD Rick George was just named the NACDA Athletics Director of the Year. Of course, Rick George was instrumental in getting Coach Prime to Colorado, as Prime said Rick was the biggest reason he came. He was such an influence, Coach Prime actually took the job sight unseen, having never even been to Boulder before accepting the job. Rick George has also seen some of the most success for both basketball programs this week, as we saw both teams win tournament games this past week. as well as continued success in sports like cross country, track and field, and of course our dominant 21-time national champion skiing team. The criteria for the award were service as an AD for a minimum of 5 academic years, demonstration of commitment to higher education and student athletes, continuous teamwork, loyalty, and excellence, and the ability to inspire individuals or groups to high levels of accomplishments. Additionally, each AD's institution must have passed a compliance check through its appropriate governing body in which the institution could not have been on probation or cited for a lack of institutional control during the tenure of the current athletics director. Congratulations to Rick George for the honor, and it was well deserved. That's all for this week. We're getting so close to some major milestones on this channel, so I thank you to those of you who have come along for the ride. If you're newer here, please consider subscribing and of course like this video. Every little bit helps support this channel and me continuing to put out news videos each and every week. For Buffs News Weekly, I'm Russ Dornish. Sko Buffs!